This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitzahone, and it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I normally rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Today though, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'll be giving you my picks for the game's most powerful creature tokens. This isn't something I'm measuring based on how cards that make these tokens have fared at Magic's highest level of competition. Instead, this just looks at the power of these tokens in a vacuum. In other words, these are the creature tokens you least want to see on your opponent's board, because if they have them, you're almost definitely in a worse position than your opponent is. We'll take a look at each of these powerful tokens, and then I'll talk about how you can put one of them into play. Alright, let's dive in with my picks for the 10 most powerful creature tokens in Magic. At number 10, I've got a Treefolk token from Midnight Hunt that has power and toughness each equal to the number of lands you control, and it has reach. This means it will grow throughout the game, and the fact it can block pretty much anything means it's good whether you're ahead or behind. Like almost all the tokens on this list, there's only one way to make this, and that's with Wrenn and 7. While the Treefolk is strong in a vacuum, it gets even better when you see this context. A huge reach creature is great at protecting a planeswalker, and Wrenn and 7 comes with abilities that help you get even more lands. Most of the tokens on this list don't have much of a tournament history, but that's not true of this Treefolk, which gets made in Standard all the time. This was especially true when Issaka's Chariot was in the format, and you could make a copy of this powerful token. At number 9, I've got 3 tokens, all of which made their debut in Commander 2014. They are a 3/3 fish that makes a 6/6 whale when it dies, a 6/6 whale that makes a 9/9 Kraken when it dies, and a 9/9 Kraken. While the Kraken is certainly the beefiest of the trio, it probably wouldn't make the list all on its own. There are plenty of big vanilla creature tokens out there that didn't, but I have it here so you can see the whole chain of tokens. The 3/3 and the 6/6 are both great because they each replace themselves with a more powerful creature. To get those tokens, you have to have your Reef Worm die. It's a 0/1 that costs 3 generic and a blue, so making it die is pretty easy. If you put it into play, your opponent has to seriously consider whether ever letting it chump block is worth it, and things get really interesting if you have some sacrifice outlets. As soon as you see this thing hit the battlefield, you know you're in for a headache thanks to the larger and larger sea creatures your opponent's going to be getting. At number 8, I've got sort of a broad category, and that's the most impressive of the Embal and Eternalize tokens. Embal is a mechanic from Amonkhet that lets you pay a mana cost and exile a creature card from your graveyard to make a token copy of that creature. Eternalize is very similar, except that the copy you get is always a 4/4. Because these tokens happen to be copies of actual creatures, many of them are quite powerful. I think Angel of Sanctions might just be the best of the bunch because it's a large, flying Banisher Priest, and a token that's also a removal spell and a win condition is pretty hard to say no to. But you've also got Adorned Pouncer, a 4/4 double striker and Champion of Wits, a 4/4 that draws you 4 cards and you discard 2 cards. Both of these mechanics were quite powerful since they inherently gave you 2-for-1s, even if the mana cost to internalize or embalm those creatures is sometimes pretty steep. At number 7, I've got a Dragon token from Tales of Middle-earth. It's a 6/6 with flying and menace, and when it does combat damage to a player, you steal an artifact. Obviously enough, this body is incredibly imposing on its own. Flying and menace is a keyword combination that means this will be unblockable most of the time, and stealing opposing permanents is simply one of the most powerful things you can do in Magic, and this will be stealing them if your opponent has them. You can get this powerful token by casting Wake the Dragon, a sorcery that costs 4 generic, a black, and a red, and gives you this token. It also comes with flashback for 6 generic, a black, and a red, which means you can cast it and exile it from your graveyard for that cost. In other words, this spell has the potential to give you 2 of this powerful token. At number 6, I've got an 8/8 Hexproof Kraken from Theros Beyond Death. Hexproof is one of the game's most frustrating keywords since it almost entirely negates one of the most fundamental parts of Magic: removal. So when you have it attached to an absolutely massive creature like this one, you're definitely in an emergency situation. You can get this super powerful token from the saga Kiora Best's The Sea God. Like with the Wrenn Treefolk token, seeing the wider context in this case actually makes the token even more impressive because this 7-mana saga delivers a whole bunch of other value. You get that Kraken up front, but then you get to tap all of your opponent's stuff, which means that an 8/8 is going to crack in quite easily, and then Chapter 3 lets you steal something. Also, like with Wrenn and 7, this is a token that does have a tournament history, since the card that makes it is so powerful. At number 5, I have Vecna from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This is a legendary zombie god, and it's an 8/8 with Indestructible. We can debate some whether or not an 8/8 hexproof or an 8/8 Indestructible is better, and I wouldn't really fault anyone for reversing the number 5 and number 6 on this list as a result, but I think Indestructibility edges out hexproof by a tiny bit. Sure, an indestructible creature is vulnerable to more removal than a hexproof one is, but an indestructible creature is far better in combat than a hexproof one is. As we get higher on this list and see more and more powerful creature tokens, we're starting to see that it becomes increasingly difficult to make them, and this is definitely one of those. You can only get Vecna from the Book of Vile Darkness. This legendary artifact can make zombie tokens, but it's the other ability that matters here. You can tap and exile the Book and Eye of Vecna and Hand of Vecna to make the Vecna token. In other words, you actually need 3 cards in play to ever make this happen. The token is even more powerful than what it says in the text box though, because it gains all the triggered abilities of all 3 of those cards. Still, making this token is incredibly difficult and just isn't something you can pull off very often. At number 4, it's a second Lord of the Rings dragon token to make the list. This one is Smog, which also means it's legendary. And it's a 6/6 with flying and haste, and when it dies it creates 14 treasure tokens. So, first off, we're talking about a token that puts your opponent on an incredibly quick clock. Your opponent has to answer Smog in most situations, or they're just going to die. What makes Smog really great, though, is that even when your opponent does manage to take him down, you get insane value in the form of all that treasure. No matter what your opponent does against Smog, they're in trouble. You get Smog from There and Back Again, a saga that gives you a couple of other nice effects before giving you this impressive dragon. At number 3, I've got the Avison token from Commander Masters. This legendary angel is an 8/8 with flying, vigilance, and indestructible. In other words, she's an absolutely massive creature that is hard to remove, and thanks to flying and vigilance, she can simultaneously pressure the opponent and protect you. You can get this powerful token into play with Battle at the Hell Vault, a 6-mana saga that flickers something with its first 2 chapters, and then chapter 3 gives you this absolutely game-breaking creature token. At number 2, I've got the Merit Lage token from Cold Snap. This legendary avatar is a 20/20 with flying and indestructible. Obviously, that's exactly the right size for Merit Lage to kill the opponent in a single swing, and that's pretty scary for an invasive creature that is difficult to remove. Merit Lage is the only token on this list where there are 2 ways to make it instead of 1. The first way was the only way for a very long time, and that was Dark Depths, a legendary snowland that enters with 10 ice counters, and you can pay 3 generic at a time to remove those counters. When it runs out of them, you get your Merit Lage token. This was an awful card for a very long time, in spite of the fact that the token you got was so strong. This is because it took a ton of mana and too much time to pull it off. But later, cards like Vampire Hexmage and Thespian Stage made it so you could get the Merit Lage token in the extreme early game, and there have been decks in Extended, Legacy, and Vintage that look to pull that combo off. The second way to get this token is a Modern Horizons card, Merit Lage's Slumber. During your upkeep, if you control 10 or more snow permanents, the Slumber gets sacrificed and makes the Merit Lage token. This one hasn't been broken in 60-card formats yet like Dark Depths has, though. The Merit Lage token is pretty insane, since it can end the game in a single combat, but I think there's one token that's a little bit better, and that is the Mech Titan token from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. This is a 10/10 with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. Merit Lage can take the opponent down in a single swing, but the Titan can kill the opponent in the same amount of time, since it does 10 at a time and it has haste. Haste and trample also make it more likely this manages to crack in for damage and gain you some life before your opponent ever has any opportunity to deal with it, and you don't have to give up your ability to block either, thanks to vigilance. Making the Mech Titan token is quite the challenge though, as it should be. You can make it with Mech Titan Core, a 2-mana 2/4 vehicle with crew 2, and it also has an ability that costs 5 generic, and then you have to exile the core and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control, and then you get this Titan. One nice thing about this effect is that if your opponent does find a way to deal with your massive Titan, you do get back all the things that you exile to put it into play. So, those are my picks for the 10 most powerful creature tokens in Magic. If you want to own any of these tokens, or the cards that make them, check out the description, where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in the video. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to catch up on past videos, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting me and the channel, you can do that by becoming a channel member or a patron. You can find ways to do those things in the description. Thanks for watching.